Hello, everyone. My name is Bren,
And I'm Jem.
and this is the Trunk2Tale podcast, in which we're seeking to humanize healthcare through the sharing of stories.
And this week we've got my good mate, Carl Giudici, who's come on. And Carl's almost a brother to me because we've been friends with their family ever since the children were little. So we've been on family holidays and all that together. So I'm just full disclosure. But it's meant that I've been able to somehow understand a little bit of Carl's journey with his mum as the Alzheimer's story developed. So, Carl, I just want to start off by asking you. Well, first of all, thanks for coming, of course, and see you next week. But thanks for coming. And uh, how did you first find out that your mum had dementia? And what was that like?
I think once when we first are aware of things, there's always that period of time where you go through oh, have I already said that? Or I think I might have mentioned that to you before, or have I told you about? But I think that we always assumed that was just part of getting older. I think when there was a formal diagnosis of that, I remember my mum and dad very clearly, they came round to visit, and they sort of explain the situation, but the thing I find most fascinating about it was at the time they were telling us the difference between sort of the Alzheimer's dementia and also the vascular dementia. And bizarrely, bizarrely with hindsight, they were delighted that my mum had got Alzheimer's because they understood from doctors and people that they'd spoken to already that there was medication available that would support mum over a longer period of time, whereas with vascular dementia that can be a much faster ending. So that must have been 7 or 8 years ago now that we were first given that.
Wow.
Can I just ask you, Carl, how was the information conveyed to you that your mother, sorry, what's your mum's name?
Mary.
Mary. How was the information conveyed to Mary and yourself? I don't know whether you were with her, that she had Alzheimer's.
No, I think that initial conversation was very much about my mum and dad doing that bit, and I think that's something that we might talk about later on. It was that the idea that mum and dad were very much dependent upon each other and enjoyed that idea of doing everything together. I don't think they were necessarily secretive. That was their objective in life, but I think that their way of belonging was just to enjoy each other's company and to do everything together. The initial doctor's visits and the initial concern my dad might have had would have been more to do with them going to see doctors, initially GP, whatever, and then following that going on to obviously talk to us about it.
Yeah. Right. Just did no, I'd forgotten it was so long ago, really. But did your mum's diagnosis predate Jackie's mum's diagnosis, or which came first?
No, my mum's.
Jackie's Carl's wife. Your mum's came first.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of Jackie's mum, that was very much a smaller amount of issues that Julie suffered when before she died. She had a major cancer diagnosis. But interestingly, because of what my mum had been through, we were able to see little bits of problems with Julie arising, and so saying to Jackie's dad, it might be worth mum being checked out. It might be worth you thinking about. She seems to be saying, just showing those little mannerisms that my mum had when, whoever said that before. I don't think I've ever made a trifle in my life. Make a trifle weekend. And it's just really obvious things to us. Whereas her dad wasn't that sure that she was at stage.
So what was the early care like for your mum? So you were saying, that they were happy in the sense that they'd got a better diagnosis than what might be possible. But what care were you aware of being put into place for your mum at that point?
I think the initial conversations they had were with doctors and the mental health team in Birmingham, and then I think it was about managing that medication and managing the illness really. And for the initial couple of years, that was quite good. Mum was able to cope with the medication, responded to the medication. Dad was always on top of making sure that she had everything that she needed. We'd almost cover for a little bit. That was quite fun whenever we went out for meals or we went to a restaurant or whatever. I think she knew we were doing that to a certain degree and quite liked the idea that several people would be saying, "Oh, you quite like that, Mum, don't you? Or shall we have another glass of that champagne we had last week?" Or, and I think that was all absolutely fine. And then I think because Dad always wanted to be open and transparent with me, Mum, and trying to keep her thinking about what was happening, he wanted to involve her in lots of conversations about, don't forget, next week we're going to see Carl, or next week we're going to see Mark or my brother, or don't forget, next week we've got to go to the hospital to see the doctor. And at some point, I don't know when, but that's when my mum started to kick back a little bit against things. And I suppose it's that situation where occasionally, you got to appreciate at this stage, towards the the more difficult and challenging phases of dementia. My dad's now 82. When that's beginning, he's getting tired. It's a 24/7 job with my mum, and then she suddenly started to become more argumentative, more challenging, and more violent, if you like. Not to the extent that she's life-threatening to either herself or anybody else, but she certainly wasn't compliant, and I think that's when things possibly needed to get changed.
And Carl, when all this is going, you're on the phone kind of, are you getting most of this information by phone from your dad, or?
Well, I'm living in, so
yeah,
I'm blissfully ignorant of most of this stuff. My mum's sort of worst stages when she was at home, and not going to see the doctor because she didn't want to, or she wouldn't get out of the car when they got there and things like that. When she still had some recognition of the fact that she was going to see the doctors, or she was definitely going somewhere she didn't want to go, then she could be very, very stubborn with that. I would say I live in Nottingham, so I don't really see that. I know that when they came to visit, they were fine. We'd see a little bit of degeneration in my mum, but otherwise, when they'd gone, we'd be saying, actually, your mum seemed all right today, or she was okay. It's a shame they had to go so quickly, or maybe we could have gone for another walk or something like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's something we're hearing from a few people is that if the person's in a newer, out of situation, the game can be raised for a small amount of time, it seems, and people can sort of, they make an effort, and then you don't, incidental people don't notice so much.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think my mum became an expert at that. And I remember we laugh about it now, but I remember when things, and we're going forwards a bit now, perhaps a little bit too quickly, but at the peak of the situation that I became more involved with that process and understanding my mum more was obviously when my dad had his, I say obviously because I spoke to Jem about it a lot, obviously when my dad had his stroke and the primary carer, and then suddenly we don't have anybody there but for mum in her own home, and that's where that became really obvious. I would ring Mark and say, "What do you mean she's done that? That sounds a bit odd for me. When she was only here the other day, she was great,
Yeah.
And he'd be saying, she's just, locked my dad in the conservatory again, or
Right.
him, or really lost the rag." And that can't possibly be right. Surely you're exaggerating a little bit. But of course, Mark lives with a mile away in Birmingham with them. So he's the first port to call. He pops in every day on his way home from work. My nephews and nieces are all old enough to pop in and see grandma and granddad. So they were seeing a much more normal day-to-day process of what Grandma and my mum was like, but it did come as a shock when we got to that stage. And I was a little bit, you're shocked, but also a little bit annoyed. I don't know, annoyed is that the right phrase? It's difficult when you're in Nottingham to be involved massively, isn't it? And I think that's the issue. You're not dropping in every day. But I was annoyed, perhaps a little bit more annoyed with my dad for hiding. We're not hiding. Hiding's not right, is it? We're not sharing as much as he might have done, or just asked for a support. And I think that was the big eye opener for me. And I remember apologising to my sister-in-law, who was looking after me dad at the time, and saying, I'm sorry, I just didn't appreciate he'd got to this stage. And sorry, she was looking after dad because he'd had his stroke, and then she had to. He's in hospital, so she's looking after my mum, and I'm just saying, I didn't appreciate mum had got to this.
Yeah.
To this,
How many years was it, Carl, between, say, your mum, I don't know, beginning to get ill or starting to present with symptoms, and then your dad not being able to care for her because he's had his stroke?
I think my dad had his stroke a couple of years ago now. So where are we now? So June 23, was when he had his debilitating stroke, and that was just took him out of the game generally. So, mum had had a good 4 or 5 years of him looking after her at that point.
Right.
And we had a very frantic 3 weeks.
Yes.
So given compassionate leave from work and everything to sort of try and sort mum out in a way that we could best provide for her needs. And because she was really, really violent in terms of violence, an awful word, isn't it? Uncooperative, shall we say? But aggressive with it. She'd go from hot and cold, dependent on what she wanted straight away. And it was clear that we hadn't got the skill set to look after her at home initially, because of the way she presented. And I think that's the stage that that was that time when we just needed to get something in place for her, because dad wasn't the primary carer anymore, and that we could therefore begin to think about what was the best way to move forward with her.
Yeah.
So that's when things started to get a little bit more involvement for me, I think, and a little bit more of an eye opener.
Yeah. There's one of the things that in the story that you told me that I always found interesting was this thing about the time of day when your mum would get most agitated, and what the response was, and how simple things solved problems for you. And can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think if we're trying to learn things which actually will help in practical situations, this is one of the things that I thought, that could be generally useful, that bit of information.
You do need to look for patterns where even the quietest person can become a little bit more animated or a little bit more restless. My mum would get up and start walking around the house, pacing a little bit. She'd rattle the door to see if she could get out, and that used to be. Eventually, we realised that was around about 3 o'clock, 3:30 every day, and we believed that either coincided in school as a school teacher herself and seeing her own kids off site and picked up by their parents, or possibly coming and looking for us when we were coming out of school. But that's similar, because she did spend a lot of her life not working, looking after us when we were kids. Went back again as after my sister, who was the youngest, finally went to secondary school. So she'd had a long time out. So that walk to school to pick everybody up from primary school and stuff. And it was as regular as clockwork. She'd just get really anxious, really sort of wound up, think about how she could get out, and become progressively more argumentative. Her language had gone by then, mostly, although she was saying something, so she was really, really quite agitated in the way she spoke and in the way the words made no sense, but you, without doubt, clear about the fact that she wasn't happy, that she able to go out. And if we did go out with her, it was, I find it really bizarre because I'd say to her, so where are we going then, Mum? We're going to look for the kids.
Right.
And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, that's me. I'd say to my brother, how long have I got to go around looking for me? He said, just let her go, walk behind her, and at some point, she'll calm down and come home. But she was fast. I mean, really fast, faster than my dad could ever have been. And I think that's where he was beginning to struggle a little bit. But she was, you'd follow her a little bit, and occasionally, you'd walk further, and then you'd get to set of traffic lights, and you'd sort of step up beside her, and she'd look at you, and she'd say, "Oh, hello, what are you doing here?" And you'd have a little chat, turn around and go home.
Right.
But you can't do it every day. That's not possible, is it, to sort of have that sort of, to be there and to know when that's going to kick off and to offer that sort of support. But
so how did you? How was that sort of resolved? Her anxiety.
Whilst Mum was really, really mobile like that, then there was no resolution at all. Cut a long story short, we had to, because we just couldn't, as a family, see a way of supporting Mum at home. We had to look at care. So we had Mum in a care home for a year, which wasn't ideal for us. We didn't like the idea. And Dad, although he'd had this massive stroke and he was in hospital for a long time, when he came home, and my sister-in-law, who was absolutely fantastic, gave up her work to look after him. My brother and his wife decided that they'd move in and look after Dad. Major life-changing for them, but it is something they felt really passionate about. And they did that, and I think both him and my mum are only alive today because of the work they'd done. Absolutely good.
Yeah.
Mum's in a nursing home, and she got really ill after about a year. It was an autoimmune response. I think her body started to kick off against itself. She had to go into hospital for a few months, and when she was discharged from hospital, she just had no inclination to walk. Whether she'd forgotten what walking was, or something had really triggered off, and she just was no longer mobile. It was one of the things I was really worried about when she went into hospital. How are they going to manage her in there? But the hospital were fantastic. She was on the dementia ward down there, and the nurses were superb. We can't thank them enough for that. But she lost the interest in walking, which then meant that she was a much... My sister-in-law won't like the following phrase: easier
to manage.
Because she had that bit more control. She wasn't going to go anywhere, so she's no longer rattling doors and trying to get out. But interestingly, she's still getting anxious around that same time, and that manifested itself in throwing your clothes off, or not eating, or just ranting and raving, or fiddling and fidgeting. And then totally out of the blue, I think my sister-in-law sort of said, "Look, this is silly. Somebody somewhere must be able to help her with something." And when you ring somebody, either the doctors or the mental health place, and they send somebody to see you, or they put somebody on for you to talk to on the phone, this doctor just simply said, "Switch that med. Why are you giving her that medication at 10 o'clock?" And I just said, "Well, that's what we've always done." I said, "I'll give it to her at 2. And it just transformed, just cured her straight away.
Right.
So that anxiety never continued, and it wasn't stored in the mind or whatever, so that when the drug wore off, she then kicked off. She just never had that issue again, which was weird. So
So when she was in the nursing home for the year, Carl, before she got the autoimmune disease, what happened at 3 o'clock or whatever? Did she have a walk around the nursing home?
Yeah, we had lots of conversations with the nursing home. I think it's he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. They're saying, well, this is her home, she can do as she likes, and if she wants to go for a little walk around the building and everything, or if she doesn't want to eat a tea, she doesn't have to, and so they very much encouraged her to be part of what they were doing, but I'm sure must have just left her to her own devices if she was kicking off and refusing to eat anything. I think she was aware of the fact that she couldn't get out of there. I don't think she ever really showed interest of trying to get out of the nursing home in the same way that she tried to get out of our own home. Maybe just because of lack of familiarity, I suspect that she just didn't know how all the different corridors together to the great outdoors.
Yeah,
but,
right. Yeah.
So
sorry, Carl, I was going to ask you. So, communications with the care home. That I seem to remember. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That you actually found out about how bad your mum was. Sort of not, but they weren't keep giving you up to date information about this progression of this autoimmune thing. So she was somehow much worse than you thought, and they hadn't called in the GP. I'm not trying to place any blame on it. It's just how it happened.
I think it was
but you had some opinions about that at the time. I remember. I think
we did, and my sister-in-law was there and visited and said, "Well, Mum's not looking brilliant. She's covered in these big blisters all over her body, and one thing and another." And we did challenge it after the event when she'd been into hospital. We did go and have a meeting with the care home, and they had documented and done everything they needed to do within their own policies and their own guidance to monitor Mum's well-being and to make sure she was seen by doctors and everything. I just think it's at the point at which somebody has to make the decision that waiting for your GP is not necessarily the best answer. And luckily, my sister-in-law had been and said, "Well, we just need to get her into hospital, don't we? And if you're not going to, if you're not going to make that decision, I am." So we rang the hospital and enforced the issue. So I don't really want to get into the wranglings about how and what went on and didn't go on in nursing homes. I think it's more important that we perhaps focus a bit more on how we can support and did support and offer a bit more. What's the right and wrong to try and do.
No, it wasn't meant to be because I know that they're all working under tremendous pressure. So it's not a matter of trying to point any fingers. It's just trying to, because for other people, they may find themselves in the same situation as you, and they need to know that this sort of thing may happen.
Yeah, you've always got that the control, if you like, going and sort of say, "Yeah, I'd like Mum to go to the hospital," or "Can you make sure the GP?" Whatever.
Out of curiosity, what was the name of the drug that they changed? You changed the time of day.
It wasn't the. I'm not really aware of the name of the drugs. I'm afraid that's more my sister-in-law's.
She's got a whole list. Yeah.
Yeah. She's on that many, I think.
Yes. She's on. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my mum was on 14, so yeah, it's like
she's on antidepressant, which was the main. I think was by far the most sensible thing for people to do at the end of the day was just to take for anxieties and stuff, which made a massive difference. Eventually, when I described her that, she's on a basic Alzheimer's meds, but then I think the rest of the stuff's more to do with her needing blood thinners and things like that, sort of heart rate meds and stuff. So all people's medication, shall we say.
Yes. Yeah.
That's to do with Alzheimer's, some of the other stuff she's on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just literally the same drug, the same amount, just a different time of day.
It's amazing. And it worked quickly. Yeah.
I think the sad thing about that is that knowledge must be there for all medics. I don't understand why, we just follow the rules like you would do if you're on antibiotics. Take 1 3 times a day, 1 in the morning, 1 at lunchtime, 1 before you go to bed. You would never decide to take 2 in the afternoon just to.
No.
And we follow what the guidance that was given, and so, don't worry about that. Yeah, just give it to her at 2 o'clock instead. You can, goodness me, why couldn't we have done that 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It would have helped. My dad back in the day, who knows?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that the health system, back to what the strap line for the podcast is that the health system doesn't treat you as an individual. It just treats you as an average of all the people they ever saw. So that's the advice they give, and on average, that's the best thing to do, isn't it? So that's what we tell people to do because we don't know your story.
That's, yeah, yeah. I think more so with things like with things like Alzheimer's, where there's not an actual thing to see. It's more of a obviously it's a mental thing, isn't it? It's more about your brain and the way your body's coping with that. I think everybody who has a broken leg generally finds people can cope with that. It's a very common injury. What we're doing with that, we'll fix it, move you on a little bit. There might be an opportunity to have it pinned or different aspects of dealing with a broken leg. But on the whole, there's a variety of techniques available to deal with it, aren't there? And I think with Alzheimer's and things, there's not so many. And I think when sometimes it's you just genuinely hope that you've got the best deal for the situation you find yourself in. Now at the moment, back at home now, so my brother and his wife are looking after both of them. So we've got our own little mini hospital wing going on, which is always good. But if you look at now, my mum is a year and a half on. She was at the nursing home, and again, I'm not making any comparisons back to the nursing home. I'm just saying, possibly now because the meds are better, the care she's getting is absolutely fantastic. And I think she'll outlive us all, Mum.
That's almost unheard of. I think that someone goes into a nursing home and doesn't leave there for a funeral.
Yeah. Well, we always wanted her to be in there until we could come up with a better solution. We didn't really know what that better was going to be. I suspect we hoped that somewhere would, once she was being given the care that we needed for day to day, that the Alzheimer's doctor would visit her more and look at the medication situation and try and find the right balance that would restore her to some more level of. I used to call it. You can talk about some sort of level of compliance, and I think for many doctors and for many medics and for many people in sort of care homes, that just means drugging somebody up and leaving them in a corner. Totally, and that was never what we envisaged. We were just saying, surely there's got to be somewhere where mum is no longer aggressive, argumentative, and trying to fight me on the driveway. Being somebody that could sit and have a bit of a chat, even if we didn't really understand what she was saying, and enjoy people's company. Because she definitely, when she was in the home and prior to being more ill, she definitely knew people as good or bad. So she knew you, and that you were a nice. So the kids would always get a smile, the grandchildren and me, and I'm sure. I mean, now even though she's many years into the illness, she's not so sure about me. But then Jem will tell you not a lot. So
it's
I'm not going against her, but she definitely knows Raj, and she definitely knows my brother. And,
right, wow. And all of your family are presumably more reassured. Is that fair to say, Carl?
It's definitely better having mum at home. I think my dad went through a year of him being around and my mum not, and we never really talked a lot about mum. And when we could, and my dad was able to manage a few more words after he'd had a stroke, just to bring into a little bit of context, that only 1% of people sort of managed to come through the other side and survive. So he was massively debilitated down his left side, just total no movement or anything down there. His speech was affected a little bit, but he got a few words back, and eventually, we were able to. We were always trying to say to him, "Look, Mum's okay. Don't worry about Mum. Mum's been looked after. We found a nice nursing home for her. She's looking and she's okay." And he sort of said, "Well, I assumed she was." So he knew that we were doing the right thing by her. I think it's made a massive difference for him just to know that she's there with him. Side by side, as it were, again. So
brilliant.
I don't think either of them really acknowledge each other. But then a lot of married 85-year-olds don't, do they? So
No.
I don't
Even
change.
60-year-olds,
Yeah.
Carl.
I don't want
And your brother, and sorry again, what was the name of your heroic sister-in-law?
Raj. Yeah, so Mark's my brother, Raj is his wife. Yeah,
Right.
they're doing a tremendous job, and I think
Yeah.
but that's something that is a massive sacrifice, and you mustn't
Yes.
lose down. And what they do is something I couldn't, and I'd be brave enough to say it. I don't think you could do that. I think you've got to be really extra special people to put somebody else first in that respect. And just that level of care and commitment. And I think it's something that they felt very passionate about and wanted to do. And as a family, we're very lucky that they wanted to do it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of put a stop to it. First of all, I think you're underselling yourself, matey. You're one of the most generous people I know. I think you'd have, if you were in that situation, I think you'd have been able to do it. But that's just somebody looking in from the outside, and what a sort of how heartening it is that your family, that you've got a great family, and how they've come together around the looking after of your mum and dad is a sort of it's a beautiful thing, really. So we like to leave on a positive note, and you've given us it seems as though there's some peace there at the end. It's not perfect, but at least things are as good as they might be, which, that's all we can ever hope for, isn't it, really?
If we'd have genuinely believed, 2 years ago that we could be where we are today, that would have been fantastic. I mean, but yeah, they're both doing really, really well, and it's absolutely down to Mark and to Raj, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant to have had you on that half hour and a bit, whizzed by. So thanks very much for everything you've said.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh no, it was a real pleasure, and I'll see you soon. But we have to say goodbye to our online guests. So bye, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. Bye bye, everyone.
Okay, bye bye.